Hello, welcome to America's Heroes Group live stream digital media show.
Good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has. I'm Jen Wagman, founder, president, and host of Generally Speaking Vets with Jen podcast and America's Heroes Group media partner. October is National Breast Cancer, Mental Health Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and today is October 30th. My guest panelist is retired Naval Commander John B. Wells. John is Executive Director of Military Veterans Advocacy, which filed a friend of the court amicus curiae brief in the Supreme Court case Lufkin versus McDonough. Oral arguments were heard in this case just 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, in this landmark case that will determine the future of the benefit of the doubt rule in veterans benefits cases. And tonight, John is going to talk to us about MVA's filing with the court and how he thinks that the argument went. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining me tonight. It's so good to see you again. The last time we saw each other was outside the steps of the Supreme Court building that morning when we were both unfortunate in not being able to get a seat inside that building and scurrying around. I think you had more comfortable accommodations at the end of the morning than I did in my car in Union Station parking lot.
Yeah, we went down to the Capitol Hill Club down there across from Cannon Office Building. They gave us a room and some coffee and access to a bathroom, so we were pretty comfortable.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I was laid back in my car with a blanket over me and sunglasses on.
Jen, if I could take a minute, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to say something about what you were talking about earlier. You know, as you may not know, I was the second in command of one of the first mixed crew ships in the Navy, i.e. mixed crew as male and female. And, you know, the things that you talked about were things that we would be dealing with every day. I mean, it's a different set of problems being a female in the military. Not to say that females in the military or anything but excellent. They are. In fact, you know, as ship drivers or flying planes, fighter planes, whatever, they're excellent. They seem to have a very good touch. Us guys, we tend to overreact. You know, we're going to show how strong we are by doing things fast and quick and overreacting and having to overcorrect. Where the females take a more of a logical, sensible approach. And I really enjoyed that tour. And I learned a lot about the role of women in the military. And I was glad to see right after that tour that the Navy expanded to allow females onto combat ships. And in fact, today we have a female chief of naval operations. So, you know, you've come a long way. As an attorney, I also saw some of the results of military sexual trauma and against both men and women. The women were certainly more numerous, and the post-traumatic stress that they went through was just unbelievable. So, you know, I was glad to hear you call attention to it. However, in my current life, I'm an attorney, and I was not a JAG now. I worked for a living when I was on active duty. But I am an attorney now, and then we formed Military Veterans Advocacy in 2012. Primarily what we do, and we're a 501c3 organization, tax exempt. We litigate, legislate, and educate. So we go beat up Congress for veterans benefits. For example, part of the PACT Act we wrote. And we also litigate. We file amicus briefs at the Federal Circuit and the Supreme Court level. We take on our own cases at the Federal Circuit and Supreme Court. I've had certiorari granted on one of my cases, actually. Yay! But they didn't. They vacated the judgment and sent it back. I didn't get a chance to argue, so I was a little upset about that. But what the heck? But in 2019, as you remember, we won the case of Procopio versus Wilkie that extended herbicide benefits to 90,000 folks in the bays and harbors and territorial seas of Vietnam. So Lufkin, was one of our more important cases because of what it deals with. Now, the theory behind the case was that There's a statute that says the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims must take due note of whether or not the benefit of the doubt rule applies. What the benefit of the doubt rule is, and if I get in too much into the legal swamp, just reach over
I'll
and
pull you
smack.
out a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. What it does is say, if the two sets of facts are an equipoise or basically equal, not necessarily exactly equal, but close, then the benefit of the doubt goes to the veteran. And Congress had intended this to kind of be put a thumb on the scale in favor of the veteran. The problem is the Board of Veterans Appeals, which is a nightmare, by the way. It's time for discussion on a different day. They just basically say, "Oh, the evidence wasn't an equipoise," or "Oh, we balanced the evidence, and it was not in favor of the veteran." In other words, they just basically would rubber stamp what the VA regional office did. Now, Congress passed a modification to Title 38 of the U.S. Code and said, look, we want the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, even if this is not raised in the briefs, we want them to look and basically do an independent review of whether or not the benefit of the doubt rule applied. And, you have to remember the folks at the Board of Veterans Appeals are not judges. They call themselves judges,
Wow.
but they're not. Only Congress can establish a judiciary, and they didn't. But they just say, well, we'll put on a black robe and we'll call ourselves veterans law judges. So welcome to my world. So these, when it gets
John,
to
I'm gonna have a lot of enemies if I agree with you on that one. I know that argument exists out there. I used to work for the Board of Veterans Appeals, and for a judge, I worked, but I do understand what you're saying. And
I know.
Yes.
So and don't worry about it, Jen. I got a lot of enemies out there too.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, that's
so do I, as a matter of fact, and they're at the Board of Veterans Appeals, so we can agree on that.
So at any rate, the Court of Appeals of Veterans Claims is the first time that a real judge appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate reviews the case. And it's very important, I think, for this court to actually take due note of it, of whether the benefit of the doubt rule was applied, whether the evidence was an equipoise, and make basically a de novo decision. Now, the problem we've got is normally the statutes require the board to be the final decision maker on factual issues. So this is kind of a departure from that. And I think it's a good departure. Now, the VA opposed that, of course, and said, no, we don't have to do that. There's another statute that governs and says that the court will just hold themselves to a clearly erroneous standard. In other words, that the board wasn't clearly erroneous, and that's almost, like 100% error, that the board doesn't have to do anything else. Well, the issue before the Supreme Court was, wait a minute, we've got two statutes. Neither one of them are conflicting. One complements each other, supplements the other one, and the court should find that both of these statutes are valid. It's the legal term for it is in pari materia, which is Latin for basically you read everything together. Okay, and that was the argument that was presented by Melanie Bostwick, who did the presentation for the court. Now, we came in with an amicus in support of the pro-veterans canon.
She did the presentation for the veterans.
For Mr. Buffkins, right?
For Mr. Buffkins, and she was phenomenal.
Outstanding.
She's one of the best appellate arguments I've ever seen. To be honest with you, I was in awe.
We brought her in to do the final en banc argument on Procopio. Mm-hmm. And she did extremely well. She had done another case, and the name escapes me, at the Federal Circuit. She had argued the George case at the Supreme Court and got robbed. She should have won that case. But her argument was just fantastic. And Mel and I go back a long, she goes by Mel, go back a long ways. And if she's watching,
I asked her if she would have coffee with me or lunch, and she said, yeah, because she couldn't be on here tonight. I asked her to, and she said, I can't, but I will have coffee or lunch with you. So
remind me to email you the picture I took of her at the celebration party afterwards.
I wasn't invited.
That was at Shelley's cigar bar. I got a picture.
Okay, don't brag about it. I don't need to hear any more. Thanks. I was in my car and I headed to the ministry on Capitol Hill, but I had a really good cup of coffee and some banana bread.
Well, she was with her parents, so
I would be with my parents too if I just rocked the Supreme Court like she did.
Oh, look, I'm going to tell you, that was a great argument.
I mean, how long? I mean, it went way over too in terms. I mean, the judges were so engaged. I mean, it was a hot bench.
Yeah, but you noticed they were fairly well engaged with Mel when she did her opening. Okay, and then she reserved 15 minutes, if I remember right. But the Solicitor General guy walked up there, and it was just like, let's all jump on him at once. I mean, gosh, even Justice Thomas asked a question that was. I know veterans. Okay.
It was like a soap opera. If you're, listen, we probably sound like geeks here, but I mean, I was going, no, stop. You're interrupting the judges. But the justices, he did not care. And he was not getting that you do not do that. I wonder if he listened back and was embarrassed, because
I would think
I was embarrassed for him. I was surprised he did not. Someone didn't yell at him.
Well, I suspect they did afterwards.
Oh my gosh. I was going, no.
Did you notice in her rebuttal, they didn't ask a single question?
Because
it's almost like, yeah, go ahead. We're listening. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to get a positive decision. I'd like to say we'll get a 7-2 decision.
Did you feel that way? I walk away from those things thinking, crap, because if you feel that good, sometimes it's a bad.
Sometimes it's that bad. Yeah. I mean, I walked out of court saying, man, I got that one, and wind up having it handed to me. And then I've gone out saying, oh God, well, do I need to get this guy's money back? And wound up coming out smelling like a rose. So you never know. But I'm hoping for a 7-2. I think Kavanaugh has a problem with the pro-veterans canon, and I'm not too sure that Kagan was sold on it. But I'll tell you who was sold was Neil Gorsuch. Okay. Now, this goes back, and again, I may be getting into the legal geekism a little bit. But this goes back to the fact that Gorsuch hates Chevron, and he's been trying to undermine Chevron. Of course, this year they did the vote right decision and basically overruled Chevron. The pro-veteran canon was a mechanism, and what the pro-veteran canon of construction says is, look, any disagreement at all, any misinterpretation, or there's two interpretations of the statute, the veteran wins. Okay. So that's basically was a tool to undermine Chevron, and Gorsuch embraced it. Okay. And oh God, you can tell my age. One of the other more liberal judges, not Kagan, but the other female, and not Brown, had embraced it also. Okay. So we felt pretty comfortable that we were going to be trucking along and doing fine. And that's where we wrote our amicus brief. The problem was, in a previous decision, Kavanaugh and Comey Barrett had basically said, wait a minute, what's this pro-veteran canon? That doesn't belong in the law. There's nothing in that. So we wrote our amicus brief, basically going back to the history of the pro-veteran canon, congressional action, and the Boone versus Leiter decision in 1943 which first recognized the canon, and the court never asked a single question on it. So we either did well on our amicus
I was
brief,
just going to say, you know,
or they said, "Yeah, who cares
they
about that?"
didn't ask a question, but they alluded to it.
They did
They
allude
did
to it.
allude to it, and to me that is just as important. And one of the things that was brought up was the fact that veterans are not represented. The majority of them go in and are not represented, and therefore, isn't it incumbent upon us to sort of take this liberal reading
Sure.
of the fact? And that's a big deal for them to recognize that and to say that out, that that is what you would think Congress would be reading, that we should be reading. That was Congress's intent, is therefore to have
Well,
that.
and you're right. And look, we're having all kinds of problems with the board. Sorry, I don't want to, but we are.
I'm not a board groupie, but there's a judge I have as a friend, and I want her to take me out to lunch soon. She knows who she is if she's watching this.
Well, just make sure when you refer to me, use a few expletives.
Okay.
And by the way, there are some good people there.
Oh no, I had amazing training, and I
It's,
will say Uncle Vito's name, but no, the teaching. You learn where you learn, and I was a young attorney, and that's where I learned.
Sure. Now we've had some of the problems with them deal with just the procedures. There's a really lack of procedural
Yes.
guidance on how to do a hearing. And so, for example, if I go to a Merit Systems Protection Board hearing or even a Board of Corrections hearing, there's
Absolutely.
it's all laid out, but they don't do that at the board. It's very freewheeling and to some extent too freewheeling. One of my
Because
biggest
hearings shouldn't be. I mean, I don't think the board is set up for hearings, but this is probably a discussion for a different.
it is.
People think that hearings at the board are their day in court, but that's not really. The board isn't designed for that, and the option for the hearing is sort of a misguided. That's my personal feeling. Very rarely do I advise a client to take a hearing before, and there are very few circumstances. And again, another time I can have you on. We can talk about that,
Sure.
but there's so few.
Yeah. See, I always want to build a record, and it's
But what a record for what? I mean,
for the next court. It's
there's so much that can go wrong there, though. You're writing. That's where you use that. You use your brief.
well, we can agree to disagree on that or talk about it a different day.
I'll talk about it anytime you want. I'll convince you the other way.
Maybe
You can take me to lunch.
We're sure. We're currently working on legislation that would completely revamp the board.
Is that right?
And we've met with the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and they told us we're being too radical. So we're coming back with something a little.
I think you probably are, and I haven't even heard it yet. But oh my gosh, you're crazy.
Okay. Right.
All right. I want to hear more. I would love to hear more though about your thoughts on specifically, what you thought of the questions that were asked of the other side.
Well, I thought they were all with the
and the response.
Kavanaugh was kind of hitting the other side. I mean, it's just it was just unreal. And Gorsuch basically says something like, "Well, why do we pass a statute that's that we don't give effect to?" It's. I thought that they were they didn't buy it. I'll tell you that. They did not buy the government's case, or it didn't appear to be that they bought the government's case. So, of course, as you said, and as I agree, you never know until such time as they come out and say, hey, this is the decision and here's why.
What do you think that the biggest implication will be? What's the biggest positive outcome that will be for veterans in this? If this comes,
I think the board is going to have to take more care in dismissing or denying the benefit of the doubt rule.
And what cases specifically do you think that it'll affect? Which ones?
Well, I can't give you a specific name, but I think it's going to be more on the aspect of where the evidence really is an equipoise, or when it's an equipoise and the board says, no, it's not an equipoise. I think that the court's going to review that and go back in many cases and say, hey, guys, yeah, it is an equipoise. And, about 70% of the cases appealed out of the board to the court get remanded back. So, I mean, there's...
For me, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the medical exams. To me, this is a case that is going to profoundly impact the medical evidence cases, because the majority of the cases that are coming, the majority of the appeals are based on medical exams that are provided by VA and contract examiners, and then the medical evidence that's provided by a private examiner or private doctor or a private opinion. And there's so much latitude that's given to whether it's the board or the regional office, whoever, that, with respect to what is given more weight and credibility. And is it going to be a VA examiner or medical opinion provider, or is it this other doctor? And that's where I find to be the big problem. And if you're going to look at revamping rules, that's where I would go, John, because
I think you're right. I think it's more than that. But
yeah.
I'll give you an example. I had a case where I had a board certified orthopedic private surgeon do a complete review of the file and exam against a nurse practitioner who was not, in fact, I think her specialty was family medicine, and they went with the contract nurse practitioner, and we got that overturned. I mean, I had another case with a pulmonologist that actually the evaluation was done by a gynecologist, and I'm not joking.
Oh no, I've had it more than once, and people think you're joking, but you're not. They're done by gynecologists.
Because one of the things that I always ask for is curriculum vitae for all the medical.
You have to now. You have
and they won't. Yeah, they have to now. For a long time, they wouldn't do it, and so you had to go to WebMD.
Matter of building the record, or you can't appeal it, and you can't base your appeal on the examiner.
Now, WebMD was helpful, and so we used that. But now they will give you the CV. It may not be a good one, but they will give it to you at least. And of course, you got the problem that of the basically the presumption that the federal government does no wrong and the agency does no wrong, and that's rebuttable. You can't fight it. I think you're right. This will help that. I think it's going to help it on a lot of things. Blue water, we still have blue water cases, believe it or not. I had a case of lying out what they call a dead reckoning track to show the course of the ship that actually went into the area against somebody who said, oh, well, the positions on the deck logs didn't reflect that. And they won't, because they only take deck log positions or snapshots in time, where the dead reckoning runs throughout the entire 24-hour gamut. Things like that, so that's going to help that. I see it being extremely helpful to the veterans. Now, the next question is, what's VA approach going to be? Are they going to come back with a regulation? Are they going to come back with a try to get additional legislation? Nobody knows what's going to happen in DC this next week. Is the House going to flip? Is the Senate going to flip? Is the presidency going to flip? None of that. We don't know, and that's going to have a major impact on where we go from here. And I don't want to get political. I'm just saying that whatever happens, it's going to be different.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But I do think that it's something that'll be it's a necessary decision. And if it goes the way I'm hoping it goes, it'll be something that is actually something that is needed when it comes to those medical exams, is a step in the right direction when it comes to, because it is a pro-claimant. It is a pro-claimant system, and it has gone too far the other way when it comes to these types of things. And I haven't understood for a long time, the last 4 or 5 years, how we've strayed so far away from that benefit of the doubt. And when I first started practicing law, the days of the Veteran Claims Assistance Act and duty to assist and and there was all this paperwork and all of this notifications, and and we were still dealing with paper files back then, of course, and all the boilerplate that went into the decisions. And this is when I was writing for my judge. My judges, you're supposed to smile and you're supposed to say, Jen, but come on.
Well, and it is a problem. I mean, one of the problems right now is getting a hold of a claims file. I'm locked out of VBMS because of another suit that we have going on that deals about basically the VA is to get into VBMS, you've got to tell the VA that they can come inspect your computers at any time, and there's some other issues too. So I'm out of VBMS, and they say, "Oh no, don't worry about it. You can get a CD-ROM." How many computers have CD-ROM capabilities these days? And when you do, it's got to be a Windows 10. So it's, there's a lot of things going on there that affect due process. And the medical is one, but it's not the only one. We're trying to get C&P exams now, okay, that have been given based on a remand. The regional office will send it back to the board. They will not send us a copy of the C&P exam, and then we have to write.
That's been a while.
And so we have to send a letter in saying, "Hey guys, you can't make a decision on something we haven't seen." And
that's right.
Green versus McElroy and a couple other decisions. And the result is when we do that, oftentimes it's remanded again, which just extends the time. One of the issues, and again, I'm trying not to go beat up the board all the time, but if you touch the piece of paper, if you touch the case once, then and get it streamlined. As it is, we have things getting on what I call the VA hamster wheel. As an example,
well, we have another show that you and I are gonna have on some of these things. I can tell. Maybe we'll fight over some things, but I would look forward to it if you'd come back.
Well, look, we'll be up in DC last week of January, first week of February. Why don't you go on the hill with us for a day or two and see what we do?
Would love it. I would love it. I'm sure I'd learn a thing or two.
Well, it keeps us going. Okay. But at any rate, Military Veterans Advocacy, that's part of our job, is to go up there and do that. And you don't mind my doing a very quick commercial. Our website is www.militaryveteransadvocacy.org. We are a 501c3, and all donations are tax deductible.
Thank you so much for being with me tonight, John, and always a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay.
And I look forward to the next time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight, and have a great evening. Thanks, John. Talk to you soon.